Welcome back to the channel. We are talking about one of Beijing's most fascinating aviation landmarks, the China Civil Aviation Museum, located near Beijing Capital International Airport. This museum is a must for aviation lovers and opened in 1986 and is operated by the Civil Aviation Administration of China, and it covers an area of 2,000 square meters. The museum have two Lismanov Li-2s, which was a license-built Soviet version of the American DC-3 adopted for the military and civil market of Russia and China. They were slower than D3 and had less range, maximum speed 180, had a crew of 4 to 5, and passengers and paratroopers between 21 and 28. Though thought based on the DC-3, there were several differences. They used a Soviet engine instead of the Pratt & Whitney. It was reinforced structurally for rougher airfields and had a cargo door added on the right-hand side. Some variants were equipped with defensive machine guns and bomb racks produced from 1939 to 1950. Roughly about 4,900 aircraft were built, used by Soviet Union, China, Poland, Czechoslovakia, and several other countries. Sam has a copy of the C-46 Commando, serial number 36044, started its life as a civil airliner project in the late 30s, but then the Second World War erupted and saw use with the US military mainly. It is larger than the DC-3, more powerful, with two massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 double blast radial engines. The C-46 were used mainly between 1945 and 1945 production. Approximately 3,181 C-46s were built. Production took place mainly at Buffalo, New York, and later Louisville, Kentucky. The C-46 could carry roughly 15 tons of cargo, and there are some still airworthy today. One of them, mainly being with Buffalo Airways in Canada, have several of the types still operating. The next aircraft is a Lucien Li-14, the Soviet Union's 1950 answer to Western built aircraft. B-4208 could cruise at around 300 miles an hour and was built like a tank. Designed to survive, the Lucien 14 was mass produced in significant numbers during the 50s and 60s. A total production of 1,231 aircraft were built in Russia and the Czechoslovakian country, which were used in the Eastern Bloc countries for passenger cargo, passengers, and military versions. A very versatile airliner, Air Force alike. And me say, please like and subscribe. It means a lot for this small little channel. Have a good. Now, the legendary Antonov 2. The museum has two on display, serials 8207 and 8404. The legendary Ukrainian engineer Oleg Antonov designed the aircraft. First flew in 1947. The Soviet Union needed a versatile aeroplane which was tough, and this was it, with 1,000 horsepower radial engine, incredibly slow flying. It could fly as slow as 30 miles an hour, and in headwinds it was hovering on the ground. It could take off in 570 feet and land in even shorter distances. It operated from grass, dirt, snow, or even mud. It could carry 12 passengers or 5,000 pounds of cargo. 18,000 of these were built, a record for any aircraft, and they are still flying in Russia, Eastern Europe, Africa, Southeast Asia, even parts of Alaska. Absolutely one of my favourite Russian aircraft. The next aircraft is the Harbin Y-11, one of China's least known airliners, light aviation twin-engined aircraft. First flew in December 30th, 1975, and was built for short takeoff and landings and Rafale operations. The museum has two of these in the collection, B38880 and B3888. There were about 50 of them built, and production ended with only one airworthy type I can find at the minute in an African country. Very unusual, very Chinese. The next two aircraft, unbelievably, are British airliners which are preserved there. The first being a Hawkley Siddeley Trident E1. Carries the registration marks as B2207 as a China Airlines, but these are false registration. Its actual registration is 51052 ex-Chinese Air Force and has a construction number of 2133. It was designed and developed in the 50s and 60s as a tri-jet airliner for short runways and hard landings and takeoffs. The Chinese liked them. They ordered 39 of them for the CAAC and the Chinese Air Force. A total of 117 Tridents were built between the early 60s and the late 70s. The last recorded flight of a Trident was in September 1997 to a Chinese museum. Very remarkable aircraft to be in China. To carry on with the British theme, this is the British Aerospace 146. First flew and designed and took to the sky on the 3rd of September 1981. Entered service in 1983, ended production in 2002. With 394 units being delivered and still about 20 airworthy. Quite a few are preserved, and quite a few are preserved in China. 17 went to China, this being the first one. B2701 ended up with China Northwestern Airlines. Other operators were China Eastern, and Air China had 4 of them. The next aircraft is the Airbus A310 B2301 in China Eastern colours and flew for them for many years. This was a wide-body jet for short to middle range. It was the second in the series of the model Airbus and first flew on the 3rd of 4th 1982, entered service in 83 and ended production in 1998. There was 255 of these aircraft delivered. The next aircraft is the Xi'an Y7, a Chinese-built version of the Antonov 24. There is 2 examples in the museum, B3456 and B3471. It was operated by China Southern Airlines. Production ran from 1970 to 1990. Approximately 250 units were built as civil and military versions. Unknown number of aircraft are still airworthy. This is the Shenyang JJ5 training jet aircraft, which once trained generations of Chinese fighter pilots during the Cold War. Serial number is 201238, and it was developed from the MiG-17 from the years of 1952 to 1966 it was produced. Roughly 10,600 MiG-17s were built. On top of this was the JJ5. Between 1965 and 1980, roughly about 1,000 aircraft were built. So production was nearly 12,000 aircraft, which is quite remarkable for a trainer. The next aircraft is the Nanchang CJ6. This got a serial of 201237, a classic Chinese trainer with a Warbird Legend, a two-seater basic trainer built in China in the late 50s by the Nanchang Aircraft Company factory. The first flight was in August 1958 and entered service in 1960 with the People's Liberation Army Air Force. More than 3,000 of these trainers were built, and they entered service in 1960, and many are still flying as Warbirds in the UK, Europe, America, and down in the Far East. The next aircraft is B8928, a Chinese civil registered Scots TB-20 Tobago. Was used as Civil Aviation's Flight University of China for training pilots, which is very unusual in France. About 350 Tobagos were produced between 1980 and 1998, and still many in service to this day. The next one is a Mil-8 helicopter, Soviet built from the Russian era. It was started producing in 1961. This is serial number B-7803, construction number is 20213, and it is an ex-Chinese military one of 776. More than 17,000 Mil-8s have been produced, probably more than any other helicopter in the world. It's a great looking helicopter, and I have flown one. Fantastic helicopter. Hope you liked my latest video, and there's more coming. Many thanks, and hope to see you soon. Bye.